when they're going to see one of our houses up in Pine and we put that air barrier in there, we tell them, like, this house has it. Talk to the homeowner. Those people will sell it way more than I could. One guy, he shows his gas bill. He compares this to his neighbors. And it's like a badge of honor for him that his gas bills are lower than any of his neighbors in the neighborhood.
Now, welcome to the podcast today. This is long overdue. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have Dan Geis. He's the owner of Summit Ridge Custom Homes, and we've been connected for a while. And actually, some of our former guests have been referred by Dan. So it's his turn to step up behind the mic.
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous about it. It's much easier recommending people to be on your show. I know a lot of awesome builders, so that's pretty fun to do that. And I'm a huge fan, man. This is like one of my favorite podcasts. You're one of my favorite guys that I've only met a few times, but like you totally lived up to it. And it's awesome to be here. I'm really excited, and thanks. Really, thank you for having me. This is super cool. So.
Well, Dan, I'll say that it's for me, it's exciting to have you on. And the reason being is I'm sure we'll get into something that Dan does that I know we'll get into on the episode is you're super big on energy efficiency. I know that's a standard of what you do. We met at the EBA conference. And so maybe we start there. Just why the passion for net zero energy efficiency, especially trying to build that in a market where there is some client demand, but the huge amount of client demand hasn't hit it yet?
Well, I think that's a good question. I mean, why is because we're just passionate about it, right? Like you have to, it's got to start somewhere. So we've got some people here that are really big into it. I didn't even know about EBA until one of my employees, he brought it to me and he was like, we need to get this, in our company, we need to have training for it. And so it kind of started from there. We looked into it and we're like, well, even if we're just getting into it, this is going to make us better. And that you can go so deep there, right? Like you said, you were there. And so, from the very beginning stages of just trying to build a high performance net zero home, they're going to have everything you need to know. And then you just keep getting into it. So I think that, we just want to build a better house. I've lived in houses that were drafty, that my energy bills were too high, that, I was concerned about, do we have fresh air for my family? Do we have, is our water clean? And so I think that's where it starts. And then you're like, well, now we build custom homes. This needs to be the standard. Where we build, we're right next to Boulder, Boulder County is like really, really hard and stickler. Like you couldn't go over there unless you were an expert in this field. And in the city of Denver is kind of the same way. Like they're already, making codes to where they're not going to have gas lines to houses. And so where we are, we're right in the middle of that. We're Golden, but we're Jefferson County. And so our codes are not that. They're strict, right? The codes are pretty good, but we want to keep upping our game in building a better house for our clients. And so I think it just starts there. And then once you start going down that rabbit hole, then, you could be building the house for Mark Law Libre and it's totally net zero. So we're just trying to be net zero ready. So we're trying to get it airtight, all of the things that go into high performance building, but we're not necessarily forcing people to do solar panels yet. Like you can't do everything that you want to do, but when they come to us, a lot of our clients, they don't know what they don't know. That's our job as builders, and every aspect of this is to bring it to the table to what can you do to make this better.
So let me ask you this, Dan, if I'm not mistaken, is this a standard? Like every client that's going to operate with Summit Ridge is going to be high performance building? We build a one-off house every time. So it's a different design. It's a different location. So everything is it's hard to say that we're not in a neighborhood and we can just put these packages together. We've got to come up with the standard of how we build a house and then present that to the client, and then how far they take it, can vary for sure. But we have our standard, our Summit Ridge. I guess we want to call it it's our product. So these basics that we do for insulation, for air barriers, for
for having a house that's Energy Star, or we have like a company called Energy Logic. They come rate all of our houses, a third party rater from the design phase. So then we can tell this client, like, this is your HERS rating. This is what we're going to build it to, like sub 50s, hopefully in the 40s. And then you're, to get it to net zero completely, you have to put solar on it, which could be, kind of an upgrade. And they can do that down the road, but it'll be all ready for them.
So if I'm coming to you and I'm one of your customers, right? And not that I'm making you do a role play, but essentially maybe educate the audience a little bit, Dan, that, I'm coming to you, I'm a client that, hey, I've loved your work, Dan. I love what Summit Ridge is doing. You guys have some amazing designs, which you do. You have some incredible product out there. I don't know much about building science. Kind of where would you educate? Where are maybe some 4 or 5 key spots in the home that you're going to speak about that would be a standard that you're offering or differentiating you from, some of your competitors as far as the envelope's concerned?
Well, I guess I guess that would be a pretty standard client, right? You're not going to know any of that. So we're gonna explain to you, we're going to show you our air seal detail around the perimeter of the house. Like, we're going to do this, liquid flash, or we're going to tape up the bottom between your foundation and your sheathing, and then we're going to just take that through the whole framing stage. Like, we're going to air seal everything. Like, if they are drilling a hole through a top plate, that's going to be sealed up. We've even kind of taken it to the next step where we've put a 3/4 inch top plate on top of our walls so that we can drywall to that. But then, then it's going to come down to when you're going through the drywall stage and you've got the air sealing through there, and then after drywall, we'll do aero barrier. Okay, so we're going to have those guys come in with that. I'm sure you know aero barrier, but it's like an insulation line item for all of our projects. They're going to come through. They're going to do the liquid latex, and we're going to pressurize the house. We're going to do our blower door at drywall, so we're going to know what the air exchange is at that phase. And then, obviously, we're in our insulation package. We upgrade that as well. We don't just do code and insulation packages, and those things are very easy to sell at the beginning of the phase. When you're going through with a client and you're showing them what your line items are, you put it there, you explain it to them, and they're like, and you get them excited about it, and it's an upgrade, but it's on the line that's like, this is part of the house, not an option. And so, I guess that, and then we're going to get you solar ready. We're going to be explaining to you, your panel. And, before we were doing a lot of generators around here. So now we're like trying to, sell them to, instead of doing that, let's get you solar ready. So when we're done, you can get those power walls, things like that. So
with the, as you're walking through the aero barrier, maybe explain that a little bit for those that don't understand what aero barrier is.
Okay, well, aero barrier is it's a easy way to explain it is it's like a liquid latex. So they're going to come in with misters in the house, and they're gonna put their blower door on, and you're going to try to put all the pressure, blow it out of the house. Okay, so when these misters are in, if you walk around the outside, and if you don't have your we've seen it before where maybe our exterior door wasn't sealed up tight when it was installed, and this stuff's blowing out the bottom of the door, and so you can literally see it, right? So I think that's pretty cool. And then if there's any sort of penetrations that maybe we missed, maybe an electrician or somebody drilled a hole through the exterior wall, if you didn't see that, it's going to seal those areas up. I really like it around all the outlets and the windows and any sort of like can light, things like that. They're going to seal, it seals everything up. So when you're on our code is 3 air exchanges per hour ACH50, we're going to get this down to under 1. Like that's our standard. When the air barrier guys show up, they know that like if we get this under 1, like we're good. And then kind of client dependent if we're going to keep going, because you just got to keep pumping it in there to keep, get that under like 0.5 or something. But we're when you get if you have a homeowner who's maybe watched a Risinger video or something like that, who's a little educated, then they're like, keep pumping it in there. Let's keep going. But even if we didn't have a client that didn't even know anything about it, like we're going to get it to 1 air exchange per hour. So that means we have our house is sealed up tight, right? So what goes along with that is then you're putting like an ERV. You're gonna have to let that house breathe some way. So an ERV would go along with that. That's in our ventilation package of the house, and that is perfect for EBA and for all those other things, because now we can filter this fresh air that's coming into the house. And I love that part of it too. When you take them in your Mac room and you're showing them this ERV and you're pulling out a, filter that's 4 or 5 inches thick and you're showing them like, this is how I'm proving that we're gonna have clean air in your house. That's another awesome sell.
Oh, it's a huge sales pitch. And it's interesting because when you think about, just to put that in context, when you're under 1 or zero point 0.5, I mean, that's incredible results, right? And Aero Barrier is doing a great job selling the home. And, you have the aspect of, air infiltration, right? Air ventilation and air loss. That's a big part. I know another part is, you mentioned this with the outlet side, but, even when you're looking at the WRB, the weather resistance barrier, as you have trades coming later and punch holes in your exterior envelope. And, there's a lot of risk we're managing as builders. And so from your side, Dan, I'm sure you get it like every builder. Most builders I speak with say, well, I want to take my company to the next level. I want to build energy efficiency, but they're kind of at a sticking point where it's like, how do you show the value to the customer? Because many customers, like many of them, right? They're looking at investment, they're looking at ROI, they're looking at, if I have to sell the home, is it a good investment? And so, square foot and pricing, and none of us really bid homes, at least in the custom world, by square foot, right? It's all there's so many variables that go into the house. How are you presenting the value to your customers to say, when they come in and say, Dan, how much is it per square foot? Why is this builder here? And you're like, well, we're doing Aero Barrier. It's not a huge expense, but there is an expense, right? And you're going through these different steps. How do you kind of ease the client when you're working through that tough budget conversation, which I imagine is happening early on?
Yeah, every budget conversation is pretty tough. So, when you're adding to things like that, you have to be pretty passionate about it. You have to believe in it, and you have to leave no room for
Value
negotiation.
engineering.
Yeah, I mean, like that's not a place that we value engineer, right? It's just like we don't not put, the air sealing detail around your foundation. Like these are standards. I think that it's easy because if you show them, maybe like everybody wants to see references, right? So the projects that we have done like that, like when they're going to see, one of our houses up in Pine, and we put that air barrier in there, we tell them like, this house has it. Talk to the homeowner, like, because those people will sell it way more than I could, right? They live it. One guy, he shows his Excel like gas bill, and he's like, he compares this to his neighbors, and he like, it's like a badge of honor for him that his gas bills are lower than any of his neighbors in the neighborhood. And that's always hard because we built like 4 houses in the neighborhood too. I didn't think I've heard you say it too. Like we're trying to get better and better every time, and so these are the things we learned. I guess you sell it that way. You sell it that this is how we do it, and this is going to make your house better for the long run. And it's not just air barrier. It's the insulation package. It's the all of the other all the other techniques that we do to try to air seal the house up better. And so I guess that's part of it. I have a little, it's hard to tell people what you're going to do. So when we're in our office, we're showing them, like I'm showing them, I like the zip sheathing. I like the Vantex subfloor. So when you can't say that means nothing to somebody who's never built before. So you have to have samples of that. And so we have a photo album that we show them, the Aero Barrier, like I have videos on our conference TV that we'll show them what it's like. So I guess that's kind of how you sell it.
Well, here's why I love that, Dan, is the best analogy for me is that when you think about going and purchasing a new vehicle, right? It's fairly easy if the vehicle's on the lot, it's at the dealership, and you're going to look at these different brands, right? And you're comparing vehicles, you're sitting in it, you can actually look and inspect the finishes, you can take it for a test drive. That doesn't happen with building custom homes. And so the only analogy is that, let's say you're going to Mercedes, and then you're at Ford, and then you're at Lexus or whatever, and they're giving you a cut sheet, just a piece of paper with, hey, here's all of our options, right? As we run through this, most of the stuff, like what's the differentiator, right? What's the separator? And as a builder, it's really hard for clients to come in and you have thousands upon thousands of items in this house. And what really separates you, and for you saying, okay, on this piece of paper, I can write down, but your home's not built yet. We can write down all the options, and we can talk about net zero and building efficiency and everything we're doing. But now you're pulling out actual, here's a video on Aero Barrier, right? Here's the zip walls, as you mentioned. Here's the Avantec, right? It's clients can now see And it probably, I would imagine, gives them a much better understanding and appreciation for what you're selling and the value that you're bringing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good way too to get a client, get you more time in front of a client, because they're obviously, it's the hiring process. So if I can have an excuse to go take them to a job site and show off some of these products and what we're doing, then it gives me another hour around them to try to make sure that we're all a good fit for each other as well. So that works both ways too.
So what's interesting is you mentioned that you had a passion for this. You got involved. Of course, you're in a market demographic between Boulder and Denver there that you are going to have clients that are passionate about this as well, which does align with you. How did the EBA conference come in? How has that benefited just that continued education to really understand the complexity of doing high performance building?
Well, I think that I think part of it is having employees that also are interested, and you want to keep them engaged and you want to keep them growing, right? I can't learn everything as the owner. Like, I'm trying to go to those type of things, but you have to delegate some of this stuff off. And I have a couple employees that are just love it. I told our first year that we went, when you were there in Scottsdale, I told one of my guys, our challenge was like, I want to win an award in EBA next year. We'll come back if we win an award. We're already doing all of this stuff. Okay. Like, and part of this too is like, as a company, you're doing all these things and you have to like make sure that it works before you start advertising the world that you're the most amazing, the energy efficient builder. And we're a young company, so we're trying to dial in our process, and we've been doing it, but we haven't proven it. We're not out there on the street saying like, look at us, like we're amazing. So going to these conferences, challenging my employees that like we'll come back, because it was in Salt Lake last year, 2023. And so we had this house that had like I was telling you about. We did all of these techniques to get it air sealed, and anyway, so we applied for a Housing Innovation Award for the Department of Energy, Housing Innovation Award for EPA, and we won one of the awards. And so we won it mostly based off of, we took an original plan that was not designed to be a high performance home. Okay, so everybody has these, right? Everybody's got a plan that the architect drew, and nobody was thinking about trying to have exterior insulation or any of these items. And so we did it. We put exterior insulation around it. We got our aero barrier, and our blower door test, 0.5 air change per hour. We did all the other different air sealing techniques. We had water filters. We had Express Solar Ready. Everything, right? So we won the award. So that was part of like, so now my team's like, all right, we got to go again. And so you go there, and then you get them there for 3 days, taking all different types of classes, and you're just trying to compound that knowledge and then opening your mind to like new things. If you go to these classes there, and it just blows your mind at the stuff you're not even thinking about that you got to worry about for next year. And so even one of the guys, because the next phase for us is like maybe a carbon footprint. Like, we're not really on that yet, right? Like we know, you go there, you start taking a class on carbon footprint, and you're like, now we have Energy Logic doing tests on our projects now to figure out what our carbon footprint is, so then we can try to figure out if we're getting better in the future, right? So we're not trying anything on it. We're just trying to figure out where we're at. And then and so you go to those conferences and you learn more, and then you meet new people. We meet people that are maybe even have construction loan programs for houses like this, so they can get better rates if they can prove that you meet certain criteria. I didn't even know that existed until last year. You go to a lot of the classes to keep trying to make you better, and then that also gives you a way to make it to where you have a company that people that work for you know that they're going to grow, and that they can do something other than just the grind of building the house every day. Because we know like project manager jobs are pretty tough, and it's every day there's a new battle, and so it's like you want to have something that we're all looking forward to and getting better, I guess. So I like that part of it a lot.
Yeah, maybe speak to this part, because I'm like you. I find so much value in the relationship with our manufacturers and vendor suppliers. You gave the one example of just meeting a mortgage lender right at the EBA conference. How has that relationship with your vendor partners and suppliers made a difference, just not only on the product and that you're putting out in the market and building, but also that relationship for maybe supply chain or cost and, all the different continuing education items for you and your team.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it I didn't think was going to happen, right? You go there, just like the build show, like you go there and there's like all these booths, but they're all focused on rain. Like, there was a rain street for stucco. There was, there's water filtration companies, there's SIPs companies, ICF companies, all these advanced building technique companies there. And then they get your info, you get to meet them face to face and you get to build these relationships. And then we come back and a lot of them are, the salespeople will be in our market at a certain point. They're coming, come to our office, meet our team, show us their products. And then that, like I said before, like that's part of our job as builders, is to know what else is out there. If you just build the same way all the time, you're never going to be able to get a better product and be ready, be prepared for the future. So that's been huge. I don't know if maybe not, better pricing because I went to NEBA, but I know who to call if I want SIPs. And they know I'm a real builder who's interested in actually using it. They're going to bid it faster. They're going to make it easier on us so that we can try new products. So, and actually we did a whole SIPs project, or a whole SIPs roof project from one of the companies that was down there at the EBA conference. We ordered it through them, and now we have that relationship.
Yeah, which is huge. And also, I think many builders, I don't want to say many, I think some business owners in every field, there's kind of this fine line where, I don't know if it's a sense of fear in the sense that, hey, if I train my employees too much, the continuing education, send them on this, they're going to have such a skill set that they'll leave me. I'm investing money in them and their continuing education, and what happens when they leave, right? And I'm picking up the pieces. And so maybe speak to just the culture and investing in your employees and what that payback is to you and how Summit Ridge has grown over the years.
Well, I think it's a great question. I've actually been, a part of that too. I think as an employee, people worried about that, but what can you do? You want to hire, I want to hire people that want to be builders. So whether they are going to be able to do that right away, or if I get them, I can train them up for 5, 10 years. They're going to be a better employee while they're here if I know that they actually want that. And we haven't had to cross that bridge yet if somebody's, actually went out on their own. But I've talked to a few of them. I support that. I think that if they do, I would be there to support them. Maybe, one way or another, I think my dream would be that, maybe there's Summit Ridge in a different town, that we could help that, because the people that work here are amazing, and I think the world of them couldn't do it without them. So I am not afraid at all of trying to get these guys better every day. They're guys and gals. I don't necessarily think that I could actually do what I do at the capacity forever. So if that point comes, that I think that this is a place where we could grow together. And if not, if they go out on their own, then I would know that I at least had the best possible employee for the time I had, because and that's what makes us who we are, right? Is the people that work with us. We can't do everything. So I don't know. I'm not worried about that.
So how does the structure look now as you look at your employees and, team members there with the culture you have? How has that grown, changed? How have you kind of worked through that growth?
Well, I think that, when you're new and you're hiring people, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, you don't have a big company that you can promise all of these, benefits, right? So you're just trying to get people that are passionate. And so I think that we've made a couple hires that maybe that didn't work out, but we've also hit some home runs. And as that is, gone on, I mean, I think that you learn what makes people tick. You learn how to try to give them a description. You kind of grow through the whole process, the whole company, right? Like you're growing with your employee, but you're also figuring out work descriptions of work. At first, it's like, you're going to do everything. And then now when we hear somebody's like, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And so, I think that there's some people who've been here, a couple of guys have been here the whole time, and they've kind of done everything. And now we are growing together on making this a company where they know what they're supposed to do, they know their roles, and then they can grow into different roles if they choose to.
So what right now, as you look at your company and growth and getting into high performance. What's the biggest challenge you're dealing with right now?
Well, our biggest challenge that we're dealing with right now is probably, I guess it's load management. Like how many projects can we have? How many projects do we need to have? How many employees can I handle and manage? And then how many, projects how many homeowners can I manage? Because every project's so different. Like as you're growing, you're doing smaller projects, and then you get like a big one, right? Well, the big one needs way more attention, so you can't use that. The plan that we had, where everybody can do 2 projects, doesn't work out when one of them's 3 times bigger than all of them, right? So I think load management for myself, for my employees, and for my life, my happiness is my biggest challenge. Other than like everything's like, it's easy to say budgets or trade partners or stuff like that. Like that, those are just the things that we'll always deal with, whether things are going great or not. I assume, because it's always been, a challenge. So my issue today is load management is what I think.
It's interesting. I mean, as you were speaking about load management, I think that's common for many of us. I know from our side, we spend a lot of time going through our capacity report. That's something we built to really understand really the duration of projects, when they're finishing, who's running what. It kind of helps us understand where people are allotted and their time commitments to it. And what's tough is, I think, us as employers have to remember what it was like being an employee. The employers are continuing, there's a lot of balls in there that we're juggling. We're throwing more as employers until, our team members start dropping them. And then we're like, okay, well, let's find a solution for that. And in many cases, it's too late, right? Maybe there's burnout, as you mentioned, the load management. And then you have a key employee that leaves because they're just like, hey, I didn't get help. And I've been asking for it in subtle ways. I didn't get it. There was no support. And then you lose a key person. And so a lot of it's just preventive maintenance as an owner, trying to figure out, okay, are we ahead of the game? Is everyone feel supported? Is their work-life balance somewhat, regular and as healthy as can be? How do you look at just backlog? Because there's a fine balance for you in construction, that you have these long durations of projects. They're long in pre-construction design, especially with you incorporating high performance. And now you're trying to factor, do I have enough work? Do I have too much work? When do I hire? When's the right time to hire? I mean, there's a lot of things you're juggling, just as you see above, the forest there.
So now that we know the type of company we want to have and the size of company, it's easier, okay? Because now I don't need to take on a job because I want to grow. I don't want to grow anymore. We're the size of the company that we want. So now it's maintaining that. It is, it's being honest with myself on how long these projects take too, because I think everything's going to be done so much faster than it really is. And so to be able to talk to the team and to be able to look at those schedules, and when we get a new lead and a new contract, just being very honest, like, we cannot start this until May or June or July, whatever it is. But don't worry, because you've got 6 to 8 months of pre-planning. You've got to get through the building permit. You've got to get your drawings finished. We've got to get all of our selections made. And so some of that is pretty easy, because they just naturally lead themselves into, falling in line. But the hard part is when somebody calls you with an amazing project and they're like, we are builders, something happened, we want to start next month. Saying no to that is something I've struggled with for this whole entire time. But now we're done with that. Like I have a leadership team here, like whenever something like that happens, it's like, hey, what I found is that I could do a really great job if I could start that job. Like, I could personally get that job going in 2 months if they had everything dialed in, right? But what happens is you lose those 6 to 8 months either now or at some point when the project managers take over and there's scope gap, or there's things that we haven't actually done in the process in the proper order. And so just being honest with the new clients that, this is when we can start. Yes, you're not going to be just sitting on the back burner and nothing's going to happen because we have so much pre-planning and pre-construction to do. But letting these things fall in line is the goal for 2024.
How does that look? I mean, what made you put together a leadership team? What does it look like? How often do you meet? Topics, agenda points, discussion items?
Oh, well, I think it was probably listening to a podcast like this or joining, the Builder 20 group or just like listening to people who've done this. And so they kind of just started with, two of my guys that have been here the longest. And one of them's more of a site super, like, field expert. And one of them's more, he likes being in the office and he's really good at processes and, coming up with game plans. And so we just sat down together. We're like, okay, clearly, me doing, because I'm the problem most of the time, because I'm the one that just wants to like get things going. Okay, so we got a new job. Now we have to do it the right way. We have to, it's got to go on this. This is a process. We sat down and we made our, we made all of our, our processes, and we talked about, how we're going to build a house, how we're going to start a project, what we have to do to start project. And then I had to give one of those guys the job of, you can't let me start this until you've got everything checked off, and it's your fault if that happens, because I'm going to start it. And so that I think that's how it happened. Is we were just kind of feeling like we could do better. It sounds fun getting a project going and making the homeowners happy now, but eventually, if you don't have everything in place, you're gonna pay the price sooner or later. So that's how we do that.
It's so smart though, because, we're coming up on, let's see, this, March, end of March will be 11 years we've been in business. And, this is something I definitely wish I'd have started sooner. I was speaking with an entrepreneur last week, and the comment that he made, he said it's lonely at the top, in the sense that, as an entrepreneur, you're kind of on an island, right? It can be really tough to make a lot of those decisions, and you're making it by yourself, because some decisions you can't involve everyone. But he said that, in his company, that he had a leadership team. And that was something we started about a year ago. I had my Builder 20 come out, and one of the recommendations after they did the analysis of our company was put together a leadership team, because probably similar to you, Dan, as we as owners, you see this nice shiny object, right, that you're chasing, and you're like, let's go get it. We can handle it. We'll figure it out. With sometimes in the day-to-day, we're not doing all the day-to-day in some aspects of the company, some corner of the company. And so we're missing some of the key components there, and how that can affect the morale. And again, going back to the work-life balance of our team. And so that leadership team is really important, that we have people in the field, people in the office. We run decisions by them. How has that benefited you, just making decisions, just being more clear, even if you may know the answer? Or has it ever changed your mind as you consult with your team and you're like, if that's a point I didn't think of, let's pivot?
Well, yeah, multiple times, because I do think that even in the interview process of hiring new employees or meeting new clients, I'm pretty open with everybody that we meet here, that it's not just me. You're going to get, there's a team. And so I would say that from starting the jobs, the leadership team would help me, has helped me decide that, we can't go to certain towns. Okay. Like we've dialed in our location, because like just that shiny object, it's only 45 minutes that way, but that's the wrong way for us. So we've, like those guys help me, stay true to the decision we made. So when we talk about things, it's like, okay, we've clearly decided we're not going to go build down there, so we have to say no to that. Or having people in the meetings when we're interviewing, clients are interviewing us, or even new potential hires. I don't hire anybody without those two guys being part of the interview process, because I think that there's certain things that you miss. And just to be able to talk about that, like you said, it's lonely at the top. Like and potentially for me too, like if you ever get to the situation where you're hiring somebody out of need, like you need somebody right now, to be able to step back and to let that person leave the room and then talk to your, the other people, and, as far as the interview process, like make you see the stuff that you're probably missing. So yeah, every aspect, from things that we've getting involved with, like I don't just get a project management program without, having, help. I don't try to, join, EBA, something like that, if I don't think that they're going to be a part of it and give me the commitment that they're going to take advantage of it.
So when you going back to the hiring, you mentioned that, that you are involved in your team. So what does that process look like? If you're hiring a new employee, are you interviewing together, separate interviews? What does it look to bring on and onboard a new employee?
Well, at first I'll do the initial interview to make sure that I don't want to waste somebody's time for them to come in and meet them, right? So I'll do like either a Zoom call or they'll come in and, I'll obviously vet them to the point that I want to actually meet them. And then the second interview would be to come in with the three of us, and my other guys have some questions that they come up with and they ask, and then the more you've done it too, like, so now we have like, when you ask the same question a couple times, you start getting some data on how they should answer, and then the third time, if they move forward to that, we meet them at a site. So a couple of us, probably not everybody, but a couple of us will go and we'll have them meet us at a job site, whether it's under construction, and then you can really, kind of quiz them and see what they know, because you get the plans out. You can ask them what they see on the plans. You can see how they show up, how they, what they're, if they come ready with their, with their PPEs, and so they're, if they got a hard hat and they're ready to go to a job site, then you know that they've been there, done that, and then spend a half a day with them at a couple job sites. Maybe go to lunch, and then I guess that's kind of how we get to the next phase of potential hiring somebody. We hire really slow. I'm constantly interviewing, so if anybody reaches out, like, I'm not gonna say no just because I don't think I need an employee today. I'm gonna keep that. I'm going to try to meet them. I tell them the expectation that we're not actually hiring, but we'd love to, things change quickly around in this industry, and that we like to keep that on file. If they want to go through a little bit of the process, then we're going to meet anybody who reaches out if they're qualified. So I guess that's pretty much hire slow. You just meet them a bunch of times, because I've done this a few times now, and I need to make sure it's a good fit. It's so important. So hard.
I love your process too of essentially the role play form, right? We've done the same thing. I know, having spoken with interior designers, the ones that are really successful at hiring, they'll have designers come in, essentially design for them. They'll give them a theme, a topic, an assignment to some extent. Maybe it's there in person. Maybe to have a couple of days to be creative and come on in. And that's their interview process. I know when I was hired just out of college, kind of my interview process, I remember I was coming in, and one of the big needs for the company I came in, they were looking for a scheduler. So we sat in the conference room, and the owner said, okay, build me a schedule. So right there on cue, like, I had to show that I could understand scheduling software, and I built the schedule. I was building it out, and linking everything, and, for about 15, 20 minutes, and, I was hired. And so, I've taken the kind of similar mindset too, that when we hire, we're having them read through plans, show that they can identify, do a field walk on the site. It's hugely important, especially the last hire we did. We took them through one of our projects, and but there's a fine line too, as a business owner, because experience is so important that we're bringing them in. And with the complexity of homes you're doing, Dan, especially the building science, right? There has to be a pretty good understanding of construction and building science. How do you blend that? Because this is where many companies struggle, is that you're now still trying to blend the company culture aspect. So how do you blend personality fit, in comparison to experience?
Well, I guess most of the time we're hiring for either a project manager or a site super. So if they are not experienced, then they're just going into the site super role, and they're going to get trained by the project manager and hopefully grow into that. And then we'll line them up with the training techniques, the things that, maybe those ebook courses. It's not just a conference. Like, you can take these classes all year long, so they can, we'd sign them up for that. But a project manager, like, that's a hard job to hire for. I want that to be grown from within. It's almost like, we're going to hire site supers, and then hopefully they're going to be, we're going to train them up to be how project manager, how we want to communicate with clients, how we want them to inspect quality of work, all of that. And if it is coming in from a project management role, they have had another job doing it. Like, it's not like we're going to hire somebody to just make you a project manager. Like, the last hire we got was somebody who'd worked for a company way bigger than ours, like, and done, way, more complicated projects, and that we can make them that type of person a project manager. Other than that, they're going to grow into it.
Now, going back to the pre-construction side, how does the interior designer, do you work with one? How does that flow into kind of the net zero? You even mentioned that you've been looking at carbon, right? How does that work with just working with your designers in pre-construction?
Well, our interior designers or
Yeah, for interior design.
yeah, I mean, I guess, from listening to this podcast and being a part of other builders, I mean, now it's one of the first things we bring up with a new client is that you have to hire an interior designer. So we have a list that's like, 4 or 5 people long that we're like, we work with these people, like you have to at least interview, and they all do different scope too. But so, we're still, new and young company. So I can't force them to hire like them, maybe a certain interior designer, but like there's a range on this list of what you will get, but you have to hire somebody on this list or bring us somebody that you've, maybe worked with before. And then that starts right up front. I mean, it's like we won't even give you a contract if you agree to doing that and interviewing interior designers. And I think it's from hearing that, but it's also experience. Like we've had homeowners that like want to be their own interior designer, and that's, you think when you're new, you think that that's great. I mean, you're probably going to be able to pick all this stuff out, no big deal. But these jobs are so hard and so complicated, and the trades are. They need so many answers. And so if you don't want I don't want my homeowner to have to deal with that, whether she's, him or her are good at picking out things or not. They need somebody else to take a little bit of that burden off of them to make this an enjoyable process. So that starts from before we even let them go to structural design. So a lot of times people come to us and they have their own design of a house, or they're working on a design. And so if we're in that early of a process, then before it goes to structural, you want the interior designer to review it, go through everything, so then we can have everything sent to our third-party rater, is our Energy Logic, to make sure that before it goes to structural, they're reviewing the plans to make sure that we can get a heating system in this house, and that we can you don't want to like go through all the structurals and then you're trying to plan your mechanical system. So we want to have that thought going through there. And so I guess that I think that it's just from the ground up, we're constantly thinking of design, mechanical systems, and pricing. So then we can have a successful kickoff, right? So that when we get structurals, I can price it out, and it's not like, oh, we're going back to the drawing board because we didn't tell them, the range of the price that was high enough. So yeah, I guess that's it.
It's funny how those processes that you're building, that even being a younger company, you're like, hey, here's these designers you have to work with. We have a project now, and it was funny because there was a builder peer of mine who had started with this client. And of course, they're not like you or I that has a policy, hey, you got to work with interior design. And so over the pre-construction, for 6-7 months, they're working with this client and came to a point where it wasn't working, relationships fractured, termination. They kind of fired each other in a way. And so this client comes to us, and I, at the time, I didn't know they had been working with a peer of mine. But we're talking, and they're just like, hey, Brad, we want AFT to do the build. And, just like any client, we're kind of having that initial discussion. And when interior design come up, they're like, well, we hadn't really thought about that. What's the value? And we talked about the value, and they end up hiring a designer. And what's interesting is that process now, the designer now is walking through coordinating selections so that we're planning, we're budgeting, budget was really important to the client. And now everything's planned before we break ground. And so the process has been great with the customer because all those steps are taken. And the peer of mine had come to me later and asked how it was. And I'm like, it's going great. And I think the light bulb finally clicked for them that like, hey, had I had a designer or a process here, we probably could have salvaged this project or relationship, because just like our consultants, engineers, architects, designers, I mean, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle to make this a really successful experience.
Yeah, I have every issue I have with budget or with a project is probably because it wasn't planned out early enough. And so, in a budget, like you could put an allowance, all day lower cost plus, you can put an allowance for cabinets, whatever, but if they haven't even thought about it, it could be not even close. You don't know if a client wants $50,000 or $150,000 a client in cabinets. And so, I'm the one that looks bad if we don't do a good enough price. And even if it's an allowance, we highlight them blue, like on our budget spreadsheets, like these are allowances, we like are pretty clear about it, but it doesn't matter if it's that far off because I didn't know their taste or what they wanted. And so we're, and I think like everything in this job is like, we're we're working on our problems today aren't because we messed up yesterday. It's because we messed up 6-8 months ago and not set those expectations right. So we definitely haven't. We're currently working on jobs that have, they all have interior designers, but it wasn't like that's at the selling point, when I got the job a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So hopefully our future will be easier and less headaches because of that.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think the cabinetry is a good example because you may have an allowance and all of a sudden you get to cabinet drawings months into construction, could be drywall possibly before you're getting this completed. And then you're having built-ins everywhere, maybe some, refrigerator drawers. And then maybe you have some outlets in the drawer, where they're putting their blow dryer and stuff like that in the bathroom and all these different aspects. And you're like, okay, you're putting in an ice maker. Well, I don't have plumbing there. And so it just adds so much complication. As you mentioned, most of the problems are because that planning didn't take place beforehand. When you look at not just design, but I know some builders have really struggled to really be as adamant as you, Dan, to say, we're going to be doing high performance net zero construction. And the reason being is because our engineers or our architect aren't on board or don't see the vision or don't understand it. How has that been partnering with consultants and professionals from architecture and engineering to line up with that value system you have?
Well, I think that the biggest structural component to this is maybe doing a thermal break and like a steel beam. And we have a really complicated project with steel beams that go from outside to inside, back outside. And so you have to cut the steel beam, you have to put a thermal break in there, and you have to put it back. And so if the steel engineer is not on board with that, like that could be, if it's not designed like that, then we get the structural drawings and we're looking for these details and they're not there. That was a problem, in a recent project. And so now after dealing with that, like that's just another step where we got to go upstream a little bit more. Like, hey, when you start designing this modern house, we need to have an engineer that understands these thermal breaks. And so I think that's another like learning process, because as you keep you keep going into this, these EBRA conferences, and you keep learning, the more the steel beam became like you had to account for 800 square feet for this one steel beam, of livable square feet for this one steel beam that went through the house. And in that house, there was 8 of them. So if we didn't do this, there's no way our heating system would actually perform. Our heating cooling system would perform for this house. And so it's like, we have to stop the job until this piece of engineering is corrected. And we can, we already knew what we had to do because we've done it in the past. And so it was just a different, because one of our struggles is we're using a different architect and a different engineer virtually on every job, because they come from us all different angles. Mm-hmm. And so we couldn't let it go. And so, anyway, so I think that is part of like maybe even continuing education with who we recommend on future projects, is that if we have this type of project, like we have to use one of these engineers that already knows like that we're going to be doing this, and we're not going to just, we had to hire a third engineer to do it because the engineer on file he wouldn't even listen to us. He wouldn't even try. So that was pretty difficult, and lost a month of schedule. That was, yeah.
I've always found that interesting, especially as you've worked with some of the engineers, because when you speak about the thermal break, yeah, I mean, not just from an energy transfer, energy loss, energy gain, but I mean, there could be condensation, moisture, especially where you're at. I mean, so you're dealing with a lot more than just energy from the condensation and moisture aspect you're integrating into the home, possibly.
Absolutely. Yeah. That it would have just brought it right through. All 8 of them would have steel beams. So now, and what's cool too is, and I think this is part of why I think you're so cool, and that we look up to guys like you, is that like you can share this. Like, it used to be like a big secret, right? That if I knew something, I don't want to tell anybody. But there's this awesome builder that's building across the street from that project, and I was talking to him about it, and then pretty soon I get the text, hey, can you send me a little more info? So we sent him all of the details and stuff, because it's the same thing that, like, you say it all the time, like a rising tide raises all ships, right? Like, it's the same thing, but like that guy also has helped me on like maybe a trade partner here or there. So like having those good relationships with people and wanting to see that every house and builders getting a better reputation is important. It's important to us, and we can't build every house. And so, that type of information needs to be spread so that we can do a better job.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is I found, even with all the drawbacks of social media and you know information at our fingertips, at the same point, we're seeing customers way more savvy, way more educated coming in, as you mentioned for you, that understanding building science. They understand area barrier, right? They understand thermal break, and so it makes our process a little bit easier. And then you enhance it, as you mentioned, when you're giving them physical examples in the conference room and walking them through the process, and then they're seeing you already build this template and have a good understanding, which I'm sure gives them a lot of comfort on this large investment they're making.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that part of it is too. Like if they're, they are, everything's at their fingertips. All this information. So we really have to know our stuff, and we have to, we have to constantly keep learning as well.
So, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, well, last night it was this podcast. So, I think it's different. Every day is different. I am a little bit of a worrywart anyway. So I do, I have to be pretty tired to go to sleep, and I don't have to set an alarm. I wake up, no matter what. I think just getting better and building an awesome company and having, just keep getting to do what we get to do is my main focus.
What's your biggest success that you've seen over the last few years?
I mean, I would say that the people around me, this is team. That's just seeing how much we've grown and how much the better type of people that we're attracting, and then which will turn into better projects. So I would say that, yeah, my team.
Isn't it funny that I want to point that out, that you mentioned that by having a good team, having good employees, you mentioned earlier in the podcast that you're investing in your employees, you're sending to conferences, right? Networking. You're seeing the vision that essentially you gave that nugget there, that by doing that, you're getting better projects. And that's the vision, right? That the better your team is, and I've heard this so many times from, collectively, call it our network. The architects, the designers that refer builders. Yeah, part of it is that they've had a good experience with them, but the reason that good experience is because they had good people that they're working with, right? That are educated, that understand the process, that communicate well, and there's one of our probably top architects in town. He always says, the value of the builder is how good, his or her superintendents are, right? As they look at that. And so it's funny that you say that having good people and investing in systems is going to lead us to better projects, which that's the end goal. And a lot of us don't understand that there is an investment there, but it does lead to that benefit at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't tell you how appreciative I am of the people that we have here and the relationships that we've, made with them as employees, but as friends, we're all, like we said, we're all going to go to, to Vegas, and that, to learn more, and to the build show. And we're all we had so much fun last year. And so we do some really fun events here in Golden, we're in the city of Golden, right on the main drag. And so we have this Saturday is Golden's and Golden. So I have a golden retriever dog. So we're going to be bringing him down here, but we they shut down the street for Halloween, and they do trick-or-treating for kids. And so I invite, I just send it on our calendar, hey, at 3:00, they're closing down the street. We're all going to be here. And our whole team was out front, handing out candy. The whole streets were full. So, I mean, I think that, doing things like that and building your culture and, your company culture and your team just makes everything else, because it's hard. This job's pretty hard. So to be able to do those things and then just to make sure that you like everybody that works here and that everybody's getting along is pretty important. It makes everything else better when you do that.
What are some of your goals? I mean, being that we're in January now for this year, what are, projects you're hoping to close or start, growth of the company?
Well, our goals are, we have 3 projects that are going to be finished by the end of February. And so when those are done, our main goal is to basically do a case study on each one of those, where they went good, where they went wrong, what we learned. You learn so much from every project, and we haven't done this yet. We've talked about it. We've always talked about how we're going to go through that, that project, but we have it on the calendar in March to sit down and go through with the project manager, with everybody that worked on the team. Who was that interior designer part of, our team? Is that somebody we're going to refer? Is that, did those trade, every single trade that worked on the project, who had more callbacks? We had a bunch of drywall patches on one of them. Like, what was the problem? Was that project management? Was that all owners changing their minds? Everything. So our goal for the beginning of 2024 is case study on these couple projects to figure out how we can get better on the ones that are, because the rest of them are kind of like at framing or MEP stage. So we have a lot of time before we do this again.
It's incredible. So what do you do for fun, Dan?
Well, I work for fun. No, I think I said some of that too, is like all of the being involved in the community in Golden is fun for us. Like, it's fun for my wife and I, and we, like I said, we do all those type of things. We love to, go camping, and I like to paddleboard. I'm trying to learn how to golf. My wife's already better than me, so I've got to start taking some lessons. I've got to, I like racquetball. I don't know. I used to play a lot more than I do now, but so I just like to do things that take my mind off of work a little bit. Get out, just whatever.
And any advice that a mentor's given you that stuck out?
You get what you expect. So that goes for everything. You get what you expect. So I love that.
Yeah, that's really good sound advice there. Well, Dan, you've been incredible. Been excited. As I mentioned, it's been long overdue for, the friendship we've had for a long time, and so many introductions you made for me and the podcast and our audience here. So for those listening, what's upcoming and exciting, and where can they find you?
Well, IBS is going to be pretty exciting for us. We're all, everybody's talking about that all the time. So we're jacked about that. And you can find us on Instagram at Summit Ridge Custom Homes. And then our website is summitridgecustomhomes.com. It's pretty much the place to find us.
Well,
thank you so much, Brad. Really, thank you. You were so amazing when we went to Scottsdale. You didn't even know who I was. You invited my team to go see one of your projects. You took us to lunch. We got to meet, Paul, and we got to meet Spencer and another one. I forgot his Tanner. I forget his name. But we got to meet a bunch of your team. You were so cool. You didn't even know who I was. I was already a big fan. I'd already signed up to go to the Contractor Coalition Summit. And the way you treated us was just eye-opening. And I hope that when people, ever come to Golden or want to, see what we do, I could do half as what you did for us. So thank you. You're an amazing guy.
I appreciate that, Dan. That's, I have good people. I mean, there's no way any of this would happen without our team. So we have an incredible team, and I feel so fortunate for them. So, and again, great friends such as yourself that, add to my education and experience. And that's why we do what we do. So
yeah,
you've been awesome, Dan. So thank you.
All right, man. Have a good day.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.